Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. Yeah, I don't know why I decided to sing that, but whatever. Anyway, so I decided to do another impromptu video. For some reason I felt very guided to talk about the importance of having a healthy communications and taking responsibilities within that communication process. So I did not plan to do this. I am just pretty much in a channeling mood of what I'm guided to say. So I reflected a little bit in my life. Well, I reflect a lot of things in my life. And for some reason, I've been noticing there's been a pattern of things happening in my life that has to do with having communication with others and how important it is to have a healthy communication. I mean, as a lot of you know from, a lot of the videos I've done in the past, it takes a lot for me to be on this platform and coming out with these ideas of talking about different subjects. And a lot of times, I, very much had told you that I didn't grow up as a person who is extroverted. I was always introverted, very shy. I never knew what to say to people. Even making eye contact to an individual was a lot for me, because I was so shy. And I'm still am, because I still, for a person who looks like I'm extroverted, I'm still very introverted. And there's a lot of parts of me that I'm still very shy. And I tend to close up when I feel like it's a little bit too much. So, I'm still working those kinks. I'm a human being. Unfortunately, I grew up in an environment that I was seen but not heard. So to me, to do this is, it's a lot, but I have made great progress so far of sharing who I am and what I'm about and the different thoughts that I've been sharing as of lately. So, it's an improvement. But so I thought about my life, my whole process of my life regarding about communication. Unfortunately, I never had a healthy communication skills. Never have. A lot of times and I could say from the time I was in grade school, I was always the outcast in my class. I was always quiet, shy. Anytime that a teacher asked me questions, I clam up. I didn't know what to answer because I wasn't taught that it was okay to talk, to express feelings, to share thoughts. So a lot of times I would clam up and I'm like, and my eyes would just like feel like I'm about to cry because I just didn't know what to say. And unfortunately, I carried that throughout my life to not be able to have a way to express myself. So a lot of times I would swallow my anger, my frustrations, my hurt, and kept it in my chest because of the fact that I wasn't allowed to say anything and I wasn't allowed to express how I felt. So to me, I was practically putting myself in a jail, in a mental jail. And it really sucks because a lot of people would see me as like they thought, oh, Laura's always been quiet. Or, she doesn't really talk. She always sits in the corner. She's always quiet. And so the thing is that I felt like I was just not part of anything in anybody's world. I always felt isolated and alone. So, I unfortunately I kept those bad habits throughout my teenage years. Even though, and I could say for a fact that my only outlet that I was able to do, and I was still terrified, was able to sing. And I still have trouble because I'm still trying to like push it a little bit more as an adult. But when I was I think in middle school, all the way through high school, and even through my adult years, I don't have this great voice to sing like most performers in our time. But I always felt like singing or music was something that it just takes me to a different level, that that I'd be able to communicate in that manner. When I was in middle school, I was in a chorus, and then high school, I was also in chorus, and then in my teenage years when I started going to church, me and my sister were always like in the youth choir, the adult choirs, different types of choirs. So I lived and breathed music because that was my way of expressing myself through music. That's why, if you guys noticed a lot on my page on Facebook, I've been putting out a lot of music videos. This is because that's how I am. I communicate a lot of times through music on how I'm feeling at the moment, or if I'm feeling very inspired, or there's something that's bugging me. I live through that communication of music. And most people will say, well, that's not a good thing to communicate through music, but that, for me, it helps me to process how I'm feeling at that moment. It makes sense how to get through those moments in my life. So with that to be said, I been doing that for years, like with the music and stuff like that. And I haven't sang in a choir since I was like maybe since I was married. I was 32 years old, and imagine I'm in my 50s. So I haven't sang like that with any particular choirs and stuff like that, but I still sing in my shower like a teenager. But what I've also learned is, like, I had to push myself as an adult, that a single parent, that I had to push myself to stop being introverted so much. And it's hard. It's so hard because of the fact that, I'm a very shy person. Even till now, I'm very shy. But I tend to push myself to say, okay, you could get through this. You could get through these moments. And I have to, like, affirm myself that this is going to pass. You're going to be all right. And express a lot of things. But unfortunately, I never developed that healthy communication through my relationships. Because when you grow up in a very dysfunctional home, you don't carry that healthy communication skills into relationships, through marriages, relationships with work, relationships with friends. Unfortunately, I had such a hard time of building a healthy relationship with people in general, because of the fact that I just, I always didn't want to hurt that person's feelings. I always skirted any form of confrontation, no matter how pissed I may be. But I just didn't want to hurt that person's feelings. But the best sad thing about it is that I was hurting myself more by not expressing how I felt and how this uncomfortable that I was feeling. And also at the same token, I don't like the sense of making a person feel bad, or unfortunately in my world there was always some sort of degrading. Like if I say something with a criticism, a person will turn around and get triggered and will say something very insulting to me, which I wasn't even aiming that. I was just expressing how I felt. So those things were always a problem for me, not to express myself, not to share my thoughts, or even have a healthy discussion, because there was always some form of altercation involved. Altercations to the point that, unfortunately you lead to shouting matches, over talking each other, not listening to each other. And that became a very toxic environment. So I didn't learn how to get those proper healthy thoughts out. So I wind up doing is clamming up. For decades I kept clamming up a lot of things. And that's why I had experienced a lot of depression in my life from the time I was a teenager. A lot of you might not know, I was hospitalized at the age of 15. I was taking 8 medications a day just to level out the depression that I was under. So that became a problem. When I got tired of being on medication, because I knew that wasn't part of my life. And I would not suggest anybody that is on some form of medication to just stop it completely. But I did it because I knew within myself that was not the road for me. Because for a 15-year-old, I felt like a junkie. Just because I didn't have the proper, skills of having a conversation with another human being. So I wound up doing is not taking medications. And the dangerous thing about it is that I was taking medications maybe for 1-2 years. And when you cut those medications off in cold turkey, that's not a good thing. And believe me, I went through those withdrawals. That was the toughest thing in my life I went through. So, that being said, I started learning to try to talk a little bit, but it was still very hard. Along when I met my ex-husband, that was another set of problems that I just did not expect. Because when you're young and you meet somebody that you decide, hey, I'm going to marry him, I'm going to be his life partner, didn't realize that he had his own set of communication issues too. So our marriage became very toxic too, because he was always afraid to share his own personal thoughts and his own demons that he was carrying, because unfortunately he had a lot of baggage that he just did not want to share with me. Little did I know at that time he was suffering with bipolar. So our marriage was erratic. There was moments that everything was wonderful, beautiful, and then there was moments that when he was in his downside, everything was just pure hell. And it became very expensive. So a lot of times he didn't want to take responsibility of the mistakes, and me as his partner was always trying to fix those mistakes on what he was doing, and not sharing the responsibility as saying, hey, we need to talk, express what's going on. He pretty much said, he always try to find an easy answer for things and not really getting the deep down communication that he should have had with me. And since I was young and very naive, I took it as, okay, I it's all right. We'll figure this out. So a lot of times things were not okay, and I was always the one to clean things up for him instead of getting root to the problem and solving those issues, and for him to get the help that he needed. Because that's one thing he never wanted to get, was any type of help, because it wasn't even a thought in his mind. Like, no, he didn't want any type of responsibility. He didn't want to be responsible to anything that he did wrong. He just wanted to shove all the problems underneath that rug. And that rug kept getting higher. So when that marriage failed, he always saw me as the one who ruined the marriage, as me walking away because I just didn't want to be bothered with the marriage. And the thing is that when it comes to having a healthy relationship with a partner, both parties need to be responsible for their part. It's not just the one-sided, it's her fault and her fault only. It takes two. It takes two to make that marriage work. So if that one party doesn't want to take responsibility, then so be it. Because you know what? At the end of the day, I'm not going to aggravate my soul because that person doesn't feel like he feels like entitled that he has no issue. He wasn't even part of that relationship. So that once that marriage ended, so he didn't want to take responsibility of what was his part, I closed that door, kept it moving. Because then I started to realize how things were. It took a long time, but I started to think about a lot of these things throughout the years. Then when I got into relationships with different people, nothing serious. Then when I came to a relationship with my second child's father, that was the hell of toxicity that I ever been in with anyone in my life. Because he had narcissism, 100% narcissism. And he always made me seem like it was my fault. Everything was my fault. He knew how to pick me up on, he was a smooth talker. And always try to make me feel special. But then, when things were okay, then that ugly side of him came out. Make me feel like the biggest piece of shit in my life. And I always try to, find a way to communicate, but at the same token, he didn't make me feel secure either. So I felt like I had to hold back a lot of things. Because no matter what I said to him, he would use whatever I say to him and twist that and throw it, like pretty much throw it in my face. Used it against me. Made me feel like I was not being truthful. Which I was. A lot of times I was. But He did not want to hear that. He wanted me to feel whatever anger that he was going through. It was just like hell. It was really hell. But I tried to make that relationship work. And the more I put in, that wasn't still enough for him. The times that I try to walk away from that, he'll find a way to drag me right back into his world. The cycle kept going round and round. Cheating was involved. He would accuse me of cheating, which during the time I was with him, I wasn't cheating. But he used something that I did before I got really involved with him. Used it to his advantage so he could cheat on me. And the level of toxicity was ridiculous. It got to the point that I got 3 herniated discs in my neck. And it wasn't because it was just there. I became severely depressed to the point that I wanted to kill myself. So the communication was toxic to the point I wanted to kill myself. And aside of all that going on, the level of communication was terrible. He never wanted to take responsibility on his part. Because again, I will say this. I did a lot of things too. But what I do is a reaction to what is done to me. So again, it takes 2 to make a relationship work. But if that one partner is not willing to come halfway and say, hey, we got a problem. We need to, talk this out as people. Take responsibility in our parts. Then that relationship is never going to work. No matter how much you want to try to make things work, if something keeps happening over and over again, then obviously that's a relationship you need to let go. No matter how the chemistry is. Because believe me, I've been there with regarding to the sex. The sex could be intense like hell. But if there's no honesty, there's no truth. Honesty, truth, same thing. But if there's not an ounce of compassion towards each other as human beings, it's not going to work. It's not going to work. I've seen people try to have that mentality of I got to stick to my husband. Because I've been through that. When I was first married with my ex-husband, I was planning to stay with him for the rest of my life. Because I'm the type of person, I'm very old-fashioned, that if I marry somebody, I'm going to stay with that person. But it has to be right in every level. You see, I been through relationships after my ex-husband. But I never gotten married because of the fact that I want to make sure if I ever marry somebody, he has to meet every criteria for me to turn around and say, okay, let's do it. But I won't do that because that's a mistake I'm not willing to have, is to have somebody in my life. And I don't take the sanctity of marriage like a toilet paper. You use it every day and throw it out. I don't. I take things very serious. But for me to be in a relationship with somebody, I need to have that sense of like, okay, that person has to meet my criteria, because we both have to have that willingness to communicate healthy, because I would not be having that toxic nonsense happening in my life again. Hell no. I've been through it one too many times, and I'm not willing to be someone's side chick either, because believe me, that's also a trap that people don't want to be in. So I would say is always try to find somebody. If you're going to look for a partner, communication has to be key. The importance of communication is always a plus, and to make sure that you both have that sense of responsibility towards each other as a couple, even at work. I honestly, communication has been for me, I had to learn the hard way to become extroverted, but yet I was still introverted still, because of the fact that I didn't have that flexibility to express how I felt. And a lot of times I was pinned against the wall, make it seem like that I was not important, or I wasn't smart enough. So a lot of times I felt like I was hitting against the wall with anybody that I used to talk with, colleagues, bosses. Never felt comfortable. I never felt comfortable with the idea of expressing myself, because of the fact that I wasn't respected. It's funny because people say, oh, you got to show respect to your boss. But if that boss doesn't show you that same respect, then it makes it really difficult for anybody to have a healthy communication with anybody. And believe me, there was total disrespect in every which way I've seen in my life. And most people say, oh, well, that's the norm of the world. People are like that. Yeah, but degrading another human being just to make you succeed in your work environment doesn't make it okay either. Because those things need to change too. To have the expression to say, hey, this is what's bothering me. Have those bosses to say, think about, and letting that employee express their feelings. Because in order to make a successful work environment, you need to have that sense of like, hey, if you want your employees to stick around and continue helping you succeed, then you need to have that flexibility to listen to what they're going through and find ways to solve those issues in a healthy manner instead of retaliation. So, like I said, it's important to have that healthy communication. The importance of these communication skills is a must. And taking responsibility, like I said, it has to come both ways. If one doesn't give you that, meet you at least the halfway point to say, hey, let's talk about it, then obviously that's a conversation that you're gonna just walk away, because you know what? You can't make any type of relationship work by yourself. It just doesn't work. I learned that the hard way. You know how many times that people would block me? Because when people get mad and frustrated because of whatever issues they're going through, And if I were to express something, my thoughts, and I'm not even trying to be mean or anything. I just express who I am. Because that's one thing I've learned, is to be more direct with people. I'm not being mean. It's just, this is who I am. I don't sugarcoat things these days. I don't live in that false talk and give you, props and say, hey, it's okay. I love you anyway. No, if I show you I love you, best believe that I'm going to be very straightforward about it and say, hey, I love you. But also, I'm not taking crap. I'm not taking crap from anybody. My boys know. I have two men in my life. One, he's 30 years old, and then the other one is 17. And believe me, they don't see me get pissed off. They don't see me yelling every single day. Because I'm not about that. The one time that I yelled at one of them, best believe it, he knew I was pissed off. But it has to take me out of my character to put me in that position to yell the top of my lungs. But I do it out of love and concern. I don't do it just because I like being toxic. Even with my last partner, me and him, we had shouting fights. I used to say a lot of very nasty things too. And what made this breakup different was that after he expressed a lot of the things he felt, and after I expressed a lot of things that I felt, we both met halfway of each other. We met each other halfway. We couldn't make the relationship work, no matter how much we want. We still love each other, but we just couldn't make the relationship work. And it got to the point that we came halfway and took responsibility to a lot of the things that went wrong in the relationship. And that was my turning point of like, wow, this breakup was hard, yes. But it was very beautiful because we both were two mature adults and talking about something that was personal. And we both took responsibility as adults, took responsibility as adults to say, hey, we both fucked up. Unfortunately, I never got that same thing from the last two partners. Because unfortunately, when I closed that door, I pretty much burned those bridges. Because the level of disrespect and the level of toxicity was over the roof. And it became my mental health and my stability as a mom, because it became very bad to the point that my safety of myself and my children had to take precedence over any relationship with a man. So I just pretty much burned those bridges down and say, you know what, I'm not looking back. I look back just to remind myself not to fall into that same pattern. Because right now I'm single. But I noticed that this dating scene is still really fucked up. Because I still see people playing certain games. And I'm not very, I don't feel the confidence in people. Because I think about those moments of how people hurt me. And when you try to have a healthy communication with others, and when you notice those little games being played, I shut that down really quick. And it's not because I want to be a bitch. It's just, unfortunately, people don't believe in having a truthful conversation. And I'm not willing to be one of those casualties again. So, I will go out with people, but I'm just not getting myself emotionally involved with people until I know for sure that that person is really meant for me. So all I can say is, for anybody who's seen this video, I'm sorry if I seem like I'm ranting over and all this stuff out, but I think it's important for others to see my experience, what I went through, and really reflect on your own issues of like communication, because it is important to have that moment of like, yeah, I've noticed the patterns of what I created regarding to my situation. Like I shared with you with different scenarios. I noticed that it was really hard. And until this day, sorry you hear all the sirens. I live by the highway. Can't help that. But you see the different patterns that I went through. It's just, it was really hard. And even now at 53 years old, it has taken me this long to really express myself as a human being. And like I said, these videos are like my therapy too. So it helps me get all this stuff out and maybe help you to try to figure out your own patterns of like why I can't seem to share my thoughts, or why can't I share my feelings. Because we all go through this one way or the other. We all have our own issues of communication, lack of communication, of expressing feelings towards each other, expressing thoughts, having a healthy dialogue instead of overshouting each other, cursing each other out, or not even maybe listening. Because also part of it, of having a communication, is to listen. Listen to each other the way you talk. Take a step back. Give yourself a timeout. Reflect on those words are being said. Then come back to the communication and say, okay, I get it now. And even take responsibility, say, I'm sorry. Because I'm sorry, don't give out the I'm sorries like a halfway ass I'm sorry. Because if you're not being truthful and being sincere about it, then guess what? It's not going to work. But saying I'm sorry and be heartfelt and really, really, really understand what you're saying I'm sorry about. Like really reflect on your part of it will make at least that relationship more truthful and more positive in ways that maybe you could come into a compromise with that person. So I'm gonna have to end it now because I don't want to repeat a lot of these things over. But all I can say is, people, please, let's try to have more listening, compromises, healthy communication skills on expressing our feelings without killing each other, and even learn to take some responsibility in those issues that you are taking part of. Because if we learn to adapt those new skills, because this is not new skills, these are skills that we all have, but unfortunately a lot of us are so caught up in egos and being stroked with egos and and tearing each other down that we forget to be as human beings and learn to be caring. So I hope this video helps you in some point in your lives. If you like the video, or please give the video a like, so maybe someone who is going through some sort of issues in their own lives could get to see my thoughts, my share, see my experience, and maybe learn, or maybe help them to reflect their own issues and help themselves to get themselves together. Anyway, that's pretty much it. Please, anyone, if you're new to the channel, you're welcome to subscribe. If you like the video, please give it a like. And you would like to share any stories with me, I am available on almost every social media that I have listed on the description box. So I will see you guys soon in my next video. Bye.